One rock can erase a city before the sky even looks dangerous. The worst part is not the impact, it is what arrives silently ahead of it. Some scars on Earth may be warnings from collisions we still cannot predict. Number 12. Ann Hodges and the Silicaga meteorite. You hear the ceiling fail before your brain can name the threat. On November 30th, 1954, in Silicaga, Alabama, Ann Elizabeth Fowler Hodges was resting at home when about 8.5 pounds of space rock punched through her roof. That is 3.9 kilograms arriving from the sky into an ordinary room. The fragment slammed into a radio console, lost some speed, ricocheted, and hit her hip or side hard enough to leave a large bruise. You would feel the shock first, then the impossible math of it. A meteorite had crossed the atmosphere, crossed a roof, crossed a room, and still found a human body. Of all the surface area on Earth, it reached one living room in Alabama. Number 11. Caracas Impact Crater, Peru. You would smell it before you understood it. On September 15, 2007, near Caracas, Peru, a stony chondritic meteorite did what small stone meteorites almost never do. It survived the atmosphere and struck the wet highland ground near Lake Titicaca. The impact opened a crater about 13 meters wide and more than 4.5 meters deep. Muddy water filled the pit, heat-affected soil ringed it, and foul vapor was already rising as villagers reached the smoking rim. Then people reported nausea, headaches, and illness. Investigators pointed to flash-heated groundwater, sulfurous compounds, and gases released from disturbed soil and water. Caracas is the warning. You do not need a city-ending event. A 13-meter hole in wet ground can still send people running for doctors. Number 10. Chelyabinsk airburst, Russia. Your windshield would go white before you heard a thing. On February 15, 2013, a stony meteoroid entered over Chelyabinsk Oblast, Russia, near a city of more than 1 million people. It was about the size of a 6-story building, with NASA later estimating a mass of around 10,000 metric tons. It came from the direction of the sun, where ground telescopes could not see it. The fireball flashed brighter than the sun, then the delayed shockwave slammed down. About 440 kilotons of TNT ripped through the air, blowing out windows across about 200 square miles and injuring more than 1,000 people, mostly from flying blasts. A rock this size can maim a city before it ever reaches the ground. Number 9. Tunguska event, Siberia. The heat would hit your face before the sound arrived. On June 30th, 1908, a space rock exploded over the Siberian taiga near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River. NASA places the burst about 10 kilometers above the ground. That was high enough to leave no confirmed crater, and low enough to make the air itself do the damage. The object was about 40 meters across, while later NASA modeling tested a stony body up to 80 meters wide. The blast released about 10 megatons of TNT, hundreds of times Hiroshima. Your windows would shatter inward. Then the shockwave would sweep the forest flat, destroying around 80 million trees across about 2,200 square kilometers. Tunguska missed the city, not the planet. Number 8. Meteor Crater, Arizona. Worse than a flattened forest, Daniel Barringer looked at a giant Arizona bowl and argued it was made by something from space. He was right about the impact, even if the mine he hoped for never paid off. About 50,000 years ago, near present-day Winslow, an iron-nickel asteroid about 46 meters across hit the ground at about 15 kilometers per second, releasing roughly 1.4 to 1.7 megatons of TNT. You would not watch trees fall. You would watch the desert become a blast furnace and a construction site in the same instant. NASA says about 175 million metric tons of rock were thrown out, leaving a crater about 1.2 kilometers wide, up to 180 meters deep, with a raised rim, exposed limestone and sandstone, house-sized boulders, and iron fragments scattered across the plains. This is what happens when the sky does not burst overhead, and the next danger is that sometimes you barely see it coming. Number 7. 2019 OK near miss. Then came 2019 OK, the rock that arrived before the alarm did. On July 24th and 25th, 2019, astronomers spotted it with only about 24 hours left. It was not a pebble. It was roughly 60 to 130 meters wide, up to 425 feet, close to football field scale. It passed about 73,000 kilometers from Earth, just 45,000 miles, inside 1/5 of the Earth-Moon distance. Put that over land and the story changes fast. A Chelyabinsk-style airburst, about 500 kilotons, turns your windows into shrapnel and devastates a zone roughly 80 kilometers wide. 24 hours is not defense. It is barely enough time to point. Number 6. 99942 Apophis 2029 Close Approach. On April 13, 2029, look up and the danger is invisible, but it is close. 99942 Apophis will pass about 30,600 kilometers from Earth, inside the orbit of geostationary satellites. That is closer than the spacecraft sending signals to your TV dish. Apophis is about 340 meters wide, or 1,100 feet, discovered on June 19, 2004 by Roy Tucker, David Tholen, and Fabrizio Bernardi at Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. Early math put its 2029 impact chance as high as 2.7%, with later worries for 2036 and 2068. All are ruled out. But a hit from this size would not end Earth. It could erase a region. Number 5. 101955 Bennu 2182 Risk Case. Bennu turns planetary risk into a date you can circle. On September 24, 2182, NASA puts its impact probability at 0.037%. Through 2300, it rises to 0.057%. OSIRIS-REx mapped this 500-meter asteroid as a dark, carbon-rich rubble pile shaped like a spinning top. If it struck an ocean, you could watch distant coastlines become evacuation zones as tsunamis spread far beyond the impact point. On land, you would feel the air blast long before seeing the crater. The force slowly steering Bennu, the Yarkovsky effect, is only like the weight of 3 grapes. Across centuries, that whisper can shift an entire world onto a different path. Small force, long clock, planetary stake. Number 4. Manicouagan Impact Structure, Quebec. From orbit, you'd see the Eye of Quebec first, a blue ring of water wrapped around René Levasseur Island. That ring is the Manicouagan Scar. About 214 million years ago, a roughly 5-kilometer asteroid slammed into what is now Côte-Nord, Quebec, and drove a 100-kilometer wound into the Canadian Shield. The inner ring alone spans about 70 kilometers. Today, it is Manicouagan Reservoir. If the same rock arrived now, your city would not need to be near the crater. Blast damage could cross provinces. Hot ejecta could ignite continent-scale fires. Dust and smoke would rise high enough to dim sunlight, while acid rain followed the plume. This is impact as geography, still staring back from space. Number 3. Popigai Crater, Siberia. After that last scar, Popigai raises the violence. 35.7 million years ago, a rock 5 to 8 kilometers wide slammed into northern Siberia. For a moment, graphite in the crust was squeezed so hard it became diamond. Not jewelry, evidence. NASA puts the crater at nearly 100 kilometers wide, a ring so large you need satellite images to read it. The Earth Impact Database lists about 90 kilometers, plus or minus a small slice of deep time. On the ground, you would drill through impact melt sheets and diamond-bearing rock, the frozen record of pressure. Do this today, and Northern Asia takes the first hit. Dust goes global. Climate breaks. Crops fail far from Siberia. Popigai is bedrock turned into a warning. Number 2. Chicxulub Crater, Mexico. Worse than a continent-sized warning, Luis and Walter Alvarez followed a thin clay line and found Earth's crime scene. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid roughly 10 kilometers across struck the area of today's Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, leaving a buried crater NASA describes as about 180 kilometers wide. Much of it sits offshore and under sediments now, but a ring of cenotes still traces the hidden rim. The evidence goes global: iridium-rich clay, shocked quartz, tsunami deposits, and a buried ring structure under Yucatan. On the ground, you would not just lose the horizon to fire and wave. You would lose sunlight, climate stability, and food chains. About 75% of Earth's species disappeared, including non-avian dinosaurs. And somehow, the next impact story is bigger than extinction. Number 1. Theia Giant Impact Hypothesis. The last impact could erase a continent. Theia rewrites the planet. About 4.5 billion years ago, a hypothesized Mars-sized protoplanet slammed into the young Earth. You would not see a crater, you would see the mantle ripped open, rock vapor blasting into orbit, and the surface collapsing into a global magma ocean. The oceans flash to steam. The crust liquefies and remelts. Above you, Earth wears an incandescent debris disk, bright enough to turn the sky into a furnace. From that orbiting wreckage, a glowing proto-moon begins to gather, grain by grain, boulder by boulder. Put Theia here today, and every ocean, city, ecosystem, and living cell is erased. The moon is not scenery. It is the fossil of Earth surviving its own destruction.